Welcome to Mind Matters. I'm your host, Nate Shear. If it's on your mind, it matters. I'm here today with Holly Jones, a wonderful chaplain, to talk to us about her career field today. Thanks for coming on the show, Holly.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, we're going to jump into the admin, the required stuff. We're going to start off with your introduction. Please tell us your origin story.
You know, the origin story sounds more like a superhero, so I feel like I should tell you about the epic tale of when I was raised, where I was raised, and then how something tragic happened, and then I rose from the ashes. So yeah, I'm from New Orleans. The Big Easy. The awesomeness about us is, you know, we have Mardi Gras. So I grew up with that. No, we weren't walking around flashing people. That was not us. That was the tourists that were there. But grew up there, born and raised, three boys, and I was the baby girl, raised to with a single mom, and my dad was mostly around. Cool guy. He's even better in adulthood, I promise. But we moved a lot. So joining the military was very fitting for me. I stayed in New Orleans until I turned 17. Then moved to San Diego, California. Finished high school, started college out there, and then went to Oral Roberts University in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Is that because your family is military?
So my mom married Navy, yes, and he retired in San Diego.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it was a good time. So, and met Hubs in the middle of nowhere, Oklahoma.
Nice. So you never know where you can find love.
It's true. I used to always look on the airplanes.
Oh, better than the bar for sure. They say library, but I guess airplane's right there.
Yeah, because they're now a captive audience.
Yeah, they're trapped. That's awesome. Okay, so we're going to jump into the warm-up. As with any sport, you got to make sure your muscles are ready. You're warmed up. So
let's do it.
We're going to start a little conversation and get this rolling. So first part of the warm-up is, what are your favorite mental health resources? Let's kick off this three-part question. I want to hear about one app you're using, one book you recommend, and one podcast you're listening to.
Ooh, that's good stuff. Okay. So the first one, which was my resources, which was what?
One app you're using.
An app. Oh, so I'm exploring a new app, and it is, oh my goodness, you're making me figure it out. So Calm is the one that everybody talks about, right? But then it was Headspace. Someone just told me the depth of Headspace. So I'm trying to dig into that one. One book. Okay, so I just finished reading and running to The Gift of Perfection by Brené Brown. I love all of her books because she's constantly talking about vulnerability and allowing us to just finally stop taking ourselves so seriously. And podcasts, I haven't, being in Japan, I haven't touched my podcast in a while. So, sorry.
Sounds good. So for the app and the book, what were some good takeaways from both of those? Or what are some things that are drawing you back to those?
So I actually just finished teaching out of the book. We did a women's retreat, and my portion was helping them connect to resiliency through spirituality, or a spiritual resiliency, right? Whichever way you wanted to put it, it was still tying back to the understanding that there is a connection between us at all times. And whether you believe in a higher power or not, that we are connected as a people.
Yeah, I like the idea of the vulnerability. And I know we have a difficult time in the military. We're supposed to be strong and A-type and fix everything and pull ourselves up by our bootstraps and all that stuff. But it's definitely something I think it's not looked at correctly, because it's looked at, I think, more on the weakness side, when really the resiliency to get through things, and the next time or times that you see that thing, you're even stronger. So on a previous podcast, we had our wonderful Laura on here, and she used a reference I've never heard before. So I've always heard it as a rubber band. You got to bounce back, but I never really liked it. So hers was a paper plate. And so the paper plate could be multiple paper plates because you've experienced that before and now you know how to handle it. So your paper plate is now a little bit thicker, or maybe you've done it so much you become an expert. So now the paper plate has become a plastic plate or a china plate or something like that. So you get to see how that is. And her example of the spaghetti on there on 1 ply is just going down for sure. But the spaghetti on the 3 ply is holding up maybe enough to get to the table. So that was really cool.
I like that.
Cool. So the next one we got on here is, what is the most embarrassing moment of your life so far?
I have so many. Oh my goodness. My embarrassing moment, I would say, so I get this awesome opportunity to preach, and one of the many times I was on a roll. I walked away from my notes because I just knew my notes inside and out. And I was getting louder and more animated. And then my mind went blank. And I literally couldn't regain the same momentum and same energy for the rest of the sermon. It just destroyed me. So, of course, for the next week, what was I thinking about? But that moment of me having to literally run back to my notes to pick up where I left off. Yeah.
Did anyone talk to you or anything afterwards?
It's Larry. He's going to always be like, "Bae, what happened there? Oh, don't talk about it."
That's interesting. I was listening to a podcast from Simon Sinek, and he was talking about that. He had one where he was up on stage, completely lost what he was talking about, took a long pause, and it was open and said, "Sorry, guys, I completely lost where I'm at."
Yeah.
And then was able to kind of get back on track and salvage it a little bit. But his main thing was, one, kind of owning it and saying, "Yep, sorry, I forgot." And then the other part was the reason for him being there, which I thought was really cool. So he was there to help people and push out a good message and positive vibes. It wasn't to sell something or make money or whatever. And so afterwards, people were able to talk to him and be like, "Yeah, I've done that before. It happens," or whatever, and kind of connect to him. So it's a time where, I think all of us have done it. And so maybe not that specific thing, but I've had, awkward situation. But
yeah, I try to be open now and say, last week I was preaching and they gave me a music stand instead of the pulpit. I don't know why, but the music stand, I'm short, but I wasn't that short, and it refused to stand up higher. And so I just finally said, "This is a bear of a music stand. Give me 2 seconds, everybody." And then finally it moved, and they were like, "Oh, good." You could hear their sigh of relief as well.
Oh, all been there, all people. Cool. Well, that's some great stuff. So I heard you have a question for me.
Yes. So I appreciate, again, that you are even doing this. It's very important for not just the military, but mental health in general of all people. So I'm curious, what was your perspective of mental health growing up versus what it is now?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing for me is the biggest change is it's a process. So that's something that's super important. And that's kind of one of the reasons this was started, as in the pilot episode, talked about my grandma and things like that, and her not being in the world and being able to provide the light that she had just really disappoints me, and not being able to feel like she could talk about it from a different generation. We still have the stigma now, but even more so, we as kids, grandkids, didn't even know until she, had her incident. So I think the biggest thing is just that ongoing process and trying to get through it. I feel like the way it's looked at for a lot of times is negative, which is really odd to me. I was listening to another podcast the other day, and they were talking about how when you talk about physical strength, people are there and they're cool about it. They're like, "Oh, you're working out. What sets are you doing? How are you getting after it? How, can I come and run with you?" Yeah. It has this positive connotation to it when you talk about physical health. You talk about your New Year's resolution, and it's like, "Oh, cool. How's that going?" But if you say mental health, automatically it's, "Oh, you have an illness, you have a deficiency," like the words that go along with mental health. None of those are positive. ADHD, ADD, whichever one you want to say, it's a deficit. It's a problem. It's not something you're working on. Yeah. And so I think that's probably the biggest change for me is trying to get to making it a standard where your physical health and your mental health are similar. You do a physical each year. You're checking on things and you're working on things as you go. I think I'm kind of rambling, but to try to get to the bottom line of your question, I think the difference is you work on it all the time, and before you need it is probably the biggest thing. As a kid, I'm like, oh yeah, you go to mental health, you go to counseling, you go to these things. Again, even counseling, just saying it still has like a negative connotation. Like, why can't you go and talk to somebody? Yeah. So I think that's probably the core of when I was a kid to now. It should be this ongoing. I can chat with people. I can vent. I could swing by and talk to my counselor or my, therapist without that. Oh, you have to go see your therapist. What's wrong with you? So yeah, I think that's it without running too long.
That's good. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So we're going to move over and start touching on your AFSC, Air Force Specialty Code. So can you give us a brief, it's probably going to be pretty difficult because we do so many different things, right? But a brief overview of your career field from someone that does it every day, not the Google version.
Yes. So my non-Google definition of my job. So I get this awesome opportunity because I'm actually a True North chaplain. So I was once at the chapel reporting at the wing and doing all of the wing level things. But the difference is here at True North, I get the opportunity to serve a specific group and live amongst you guys. That's my favorite part. My day-to-day is literally huddles because I'm at the med group, right? Not every group has a huddle. They normally have once a week meetings, but our huddles are that awesome touch point where we get to see everybody first thing in the morning and see what everybody's doing that day. And I even get to let y'all know what I'm doing and if you'll see me around in your area. From there, it's meetings, all calls. I get to brief leadership and give them resiliency moments. Even better than that, I get to take flights out. I got to start the initiative of, the flight morale events. And so that just allowed me to encourage leadership to let their individual flights to leave for the afternoon and have lunch and a morale time with me. So team building, zip lining, round one, you name it. It's been a lot of fun. And from there, retreats for families and marrieds, and it's a lot of fun. The easy, it's an easy button of taking care of people for me. And then on the other side, it's counselings, memorial services, marriages, baby dedications. I still get to do my religious, important aspects of it as well.
Awesome. That's good stuff. So got a question. I think you probably kind of touched on it, but just to expand a little bit more, what are the things that you really enjoy about being a chaplain?
I love serving. Back in the day, I used to meet people on their worst day, and I didn't know that it could be what it is today. Living amongst my peoples, I meet them on their best day. They tell me, "Oh, I'm so glad I ran into you. I just found out I'm getting promoted, right? I got my line number. I just found out I'm pregnant. I just got proposed to." Like, I get to be included in those moments too now. That's my favorite part. If they're having a blah day, I'd miss it because I don't know their personality before. Now I'm learning their personality, and I can tell if they're sitting the front desk and serving the people and they're still saying, "Hey, how you doing? Thank you for coming. It'll be just a few minutes. Here's your clipboard." And just by the tone of their voice, I can hear something's wrong. And I get to, after the patient walks away, I get to walk up to them and say, "What's going on? You need a side moment with me?"
That's a good point, because I think that is brought up a lot of times in the military throughout different stuff. They say, keep an eye and make sure you don't notice anything different.
Yeah.
But if you don't know, then you don't know what is different. Because I think a lot of times we associate the negative aspect again, like quiet, reserved, and whatnot. But it could just as easily be super hyper, and something for someone that's more introverted to be more odd that now they're hyper when they shouldn't be. But most people will be like, oh, yeah, that's cool. They're extra
coming out
energy.
their shell.
Yeah. But you wouldn't know if you don't know the baseline. So that's a good point. You got to know people on the everyday. And I'm glad you're getting to see the positive, because I feel like that kind of goes back to me talking about mental health. You know, you get to see the ups and downs and the progression of things instead of just the lows. It's kind of draining if you're only seeing the lows. I always wonder how that worked. I remember I talked to my old chaplain. He had deployed, Chaplain Reynolds. He's a great guy. But I'd asked him, like, how does that work in the deployed environment where you're the chaplain absorbing all the, negative and all the things that are going on? So, what are some resources you use to make sure you're not always drained? Now you get the positive and the negatives, but if you're in a normal thing and you were in all the negatives, how do you kind of get through that, absorbing everyone else's lows?
I think that's where my self-care comes in, right? If I'm practicing, then I'm able to receive. And then the other thing is literally not taking their stuff off and allowing them to drop it off, right? I think everybody visualizes people bringing their luggage to me and leaving their luggage as they're walking out the door. What I like my visual is more of, I let them open it up. They show me what they want to show me. That's in their suitcase, right? They might just show me their toothbrush. Some people will show me everything. And then that's when I want to know, what do you want? What's your focus today? Because we can't talk about all of it, right? What's your focus today? What's going to get you back in the fight? Because do you want to go home? Because we could talk to your leadership about getting you home. Not home back in the States. I mean, literally take a brain break, right? Or oh no, chaplain, I'm good. Okay. So what do you want to talk about? And then they take out that one shirt that meant the world to them, and now it doesn't, and they don't know why. Something like that. And so allowing them to just put something on display for that moment, discuss it. We go back and forth as they allow me, right? And then they fold it back up, put it in their suitcase, and then they on their way.
That's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting too. Sometimes the things you would never think about. I had a moment a year ago, 2 years ago, I forget what it was, but it was here, and I was driving to work. I had a older Legacy, which was an automatic, and I got my captain car, my sweet Forester STI, and I was back in a stick shift, and I was driving to work, and I don't have outward emotions too often, but this particular day, my eyes were swelling pretty bad, and water was coming out of places and whatnot. And it was really interesting because it wasn't a profound or big moment, but it was a reflection back to my grandpa that lived with my grandmother, that had her loss to mental health. And he would take me out, and we would sit on old dusty roads in this old, disgusting, beat up Toyota pickup, and start and stop in first gear probably over 100 times, 200 times. I'm not sure, because, second, third, they're not too hard once you get going. But that initial, that initial roll is rough. So he honed in on that, and we sat there forever. And so it was just one of those reflections of something that now brings me joy. I love shifting through the gears. I never would have had if Grandpa didn't want to sit in some road with me. And so it was just kind of a reflection back on both of them just being outstanding people that did things that were difficult or not fun because they were the right thing to do. Did they have to sit with me? No, we could have probably, eaten ice cream or done something more fun or whatever, but gave me those life skills, which is really great.
Yeah, that's good.
Next question is, what are some of the aspects of being a chaplain that are less desirable? So you got people out there, they're listening to this, they're like, oh, I really want to know about being a chaplain, the good and the bad. So we've kind of highlighted the enjoyable things. What about less desirable?
So the good, the bad, the ugly, huh?
They want to hear it.
I don't want to say it.
It's just expectation management.
Oh, absolutely.
So they know.
So, interestingly enough, during the time that D&I, right? That's what diversity and inclusion started coming to light in the world. But the Air Force, remember, they started doing an inventory. And thus, each individual AFSC seemed to start doing the same thing. Our chief of chaplains was no exception. He, too, was just chomping at the bits to find out what was out there for his people. Of course, being a 2-star general, I imagine people lie to you all the time. Everything's peaches under my care, sir.
Like we heard with my eval.
Oh, I'm not going to listen to you right now. It's live. And so our 2-star put one of our first African-American female 06 chaplain to work and had her build a team and do their research. I think they reached out to all of the minorities. I was one of them. And they asked pertinent questions. And so when our chief of chaplains read the results after, now this is during 2020, they usually had wing chaplain symposiums where they'd all fly to Washington, D.C., sit amongst themselves and powwow. This time, because it was 2020, they did a virtual and invited everybody to watch, which was it meant the world to me because I just always wanted to know what they were talking about. I'm nosy. And he said, all right, this is the portion. He said, all right, now that we're done with business, we have new business. Y'all have seen the climate of the country, and it's concerning because now we're seeing also that this is being reflected heavily in the Air Force. How promotion rates were lopsided with colors. How disciplinary action was lopsided with colors, right? He said, so I was curious, of course, because I had to report to our leadership here, our 4-star, what is the Air Force Chaplain Corps look like? And so he read the facts that we gave, and the questions that weren't moving before he started reading started filling up. And mind you, at that time, we could see the name of the chaplain who was writing it.
Oh.
It wasn't a response 1 and 2 and 3. Teams is very open, right?
That's true. Yeah,
Teams
right
shared
there.
exactly who was saying what. And when I started seeing the true colors of some of these people, that might be time for them to retire because we are not the same Air Force that we used to be. They wanted to know, what scale of questions did you use? What scientific resources did you tap into to actually gather this information?
They're trying to minimize.
They immediately. At the end of the day, I didn't understand why they didn't know that people were hurting, that were wearing the same cross, the same religious patch that's distributed to the same people in the 52R series, right? I don't care if they were a R1, R2, R3, our staff, whatever that one looks like, 4.
Yeah, I think one thing that's hard for people to understand, especially civilians, I mean, quite a few things, but one of those is the United States military and the Air Force is just a shred out of the U.S. population.
Yeah.
So sometimes with the core values and things like that, they believe us to be like near perfect or, not the general population. And we should be held to a higher standard. But in a lot of cases, it is just the exact people that are in the United States. So, some good and some not good. But yeah, that's unfortunate. I know in my time as a flight commander working through some of those leadership roles, one thing I try to keep in mind is a person feels something, and if they feel it, they feel it, and that's the end of it. So I know sometimes from my particular background, however I was raised, sometimes I don't understand, but that a feeling is a feeling, and that's where it stops. A person, once they feel it, that's it. It is a truth at that point.
Yeah.
You can't disprove or say not the right person responded or whatever they were trying to do. That's pretty unfortunate that happened. If people are feeling it, then it's a truth at that point. You can not like the truth because you don't like the ugliness you see, but that doesn't make it not a truth.
Right.
That is unfortunate. Anything else you want to touch on the less desirable?
I guess my closing is for that one is just the understanding that your career is your career. No one's going to fight for it except for you, right?
That is definitely true.
Yeah. I came from the reserve world. I am alone is what they used to call it. Oh. And I changed it to I'm awesome because I just wanted my narrative to be different. I didn't want to believe that I'm alone. I thank you for giving me the advice that lots of people get lost in the system or don't get their orders written or something like that. Don't get paid because they didn't file their stuff right. So I learned everything I could in the beginning and then I rocked it. But they told me when you come to active duty, none of that is an issue. And then I got to my first duty station and wasn't put up for one award.
Oh, shoot.
But when the colonel, the 06 of the base, the commander, came into the chapel to specifically point in my wing chaplain's face and ask, I see her more than I've ever seen you. Why don't I see any awards coming across my desk?
Well, at least he identified.
He did.
Not good that it got to that point, but...
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So I left my first assignment. No awards.
Dang.
Yeah. Too late. So...
Okay, let's flip back to a slightly more positive note.
Let's do it.
Talk about what are some unique opportunities that your specific career field presents. Some trainings, symposiums, what's going on where someone would love to get involved in some of this stuff.
That's cool. So I just came back from the women's, oh goodness, how was it phrased? The female chaplain, women's chaplain 50th military symposium, something like that. It was all the women in all branches of the militaries that are chaplains. We came together to celebrate 50 years of finally women entering service.
Nice.
So what's funny is that when that came about, the Marine Corps had just celebrated 247 years, not even a 250, right? 247 they were celebrating. And then they said, yeah, and here's the women's chaplain symposium, 50 years. And so I was like, that's very, very interesting. I'm only 40 something. So that means that it took a long time. Long time. So anyway, I thought that was really cool. It was a lot of fun to actually talk to Navy, because they cover Navy, those Navy chaplains cover Marines, of course. The Coasties weren't there represented, sadly. But the Army were there and naturally treated the chaplain, the Air Force chaplain, like we're awesome.
Some Chair Force jokes.
A lot of Chair Force jokes. But that was just one opportunity. I believe that the newest opportunities are coming about are through strong bonds right now. We're getting the opportunity to get all of our chaplains. Not last year's initiative was to get all the chaplains at least 1 to 2 trainings. This year they said take the trainings. Here's the money. Go train. And so I'm really excited about that. I've done adventure, and learned how to just take care of singles, marrieds, blended families. Like that's just learning so much. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's awesome. So are those certifications, trainings? What are those considered? Because you mentioned Strong Bonds and a few others. Are those acronyms or companies or?
So Strong Bond seems to be an umbrella
Mm.
for instance, five love languages. I got that one.
Ah,
Franklin Covey. He's the five effective.
leader of an effective leader.
There we go. Effective. But this one teaches you effective leadership, effective families, effective. Yeah, it just takes you on a whole new level that you could get certified in. And then another one is Got Your Back. And it's another one that I love for single airmen. It's and yes, you get certified in these things. It's a week, 3 days to a week training, and we get on there virtually with the company. But the Strong Bonds, it actually came from the idea through the Army. And so they did it first. We begged for it for years, and they just continued to tell us, "Your Air Force, their Army." But finally, so grateful for our last Chief of Chaplains, Chaplain Shike. He just had such a vision, and he brought that to the forefront.
That's awesome. I'm super glad. One of the things I love is professional development. Not even professional development, more personal development. I love when people are just learning and making things better. So it sounds like as a chaplain, you're almost like lifetime learner. You can just keep learning these things. It keeps your mind ready, and I think that keeps us healthy. So that's some great opportunities. I'd like to shift over and ask you another question. What's a common misconception about your job?
That we're all kind, we're all caring, we're all the same. We are all not all alike.
So what are some personal stories that can demonstrate that? You seen some not nice ones?
Oh my gosh.
We got to remove names or,
So I can give an older lieutenant colonel. When I was first coming in, I was a chaplain candidate. And I went to a non-name base and did 30 days of a tour. And he was nice to me in our interactions. But I found out through not the grapevine, through the actual person that was being harassed, that this individual continued to torture the African American female chaplain that was at that base for her entire time. Oh. So it was very interesting to hear that existed. And so I figured that was a one-time thing. And then I met another lady who was a major, and she was, I guess, she'd had a rough career and she was separating. And so I was like, "Oh, ma'am, are you separating to go do something more awesome?" And she was like, "No, it's because they suck." I never heard the chaplain say that before. and so that's what I've run into. Literally, people being tortured on the job by a specific leader, someone that was given the rank of trust. And that's the difficulty. Sorry.
I wonder with that, not that we could unpack that right now, but yeah. I wonder if that is always in a person or if it's something that grows with the stripes on the shoulder or, the things on their chest or whatnot on, that boldness, or does it just exemplify what was always there? But I don't know if there's a correct answer, because I know I've seen somebody was talking about winning the lottery. I forgot who it was, but they're like, money's bad. Like, money's not bad. Money just exemplifies, extrapolates what was already there. So if you were a terrible person, you just get to be a terrible person with money.
It's like the super soldier serum.
Yeah, it just activates. So like if you were a good person, then you donate to charity and you use it well and whatever, or you MC Hammer it and it all like disappears. There's no money. I don't know the exact backstory with MC Hammer.
Oh, but you just threw him out there, poor guy.
He didn't use it wisely, not poorly, but not against anybody. But I don't think he used it the best.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Okay. So that's why I tell people all the time. I pray that I change evolve into an amazing leader, right? I hope I'm an amazing regular field chaplain, right? I hope an amazing individual. But I hope it translates when I'm managing people, managing books, managing this, managing that, like keeping an entire office in regs, for instance. That's my hope.
Yeah, and I think the thing I always try to remember and hopefully live by, I've seen written a couple different ways, but it's that theory that people remember like how you treated them, not what they won or what they did or, things like that, but how you treated them. So if you asked them if they were doing well, I hope it's more of the smaller things. If you were there when you were needed. So I hope like when people have called and needed help, hopefully been there and things like that. Because some people like, oh, you're working too much or too long or whatnot. But I feel like my poll is usually back that way. Like somebody needed something and hopefully they'll remember it in the future that was able to knock some stuff out for them. So next question. What is the biggest challenge you're facing in your life right now, and how are you getting after it?
Biggest challenge. That's a good question. So I think my challenge, if I can remember correctly, that I was thinking of earlier, so this assignment is 3 years. My first year, I was adjusting, right? Getting to know the island, getting to know my job, and learning how to trust those around me. Mostly I came from a very untrustworthy space. And so coming to this job, I needed them to gain some trust with me instead of me just handing it out. Year 2, you're a little more comfortable in your job, so you do it. Year 3 is my over and beyond year. I literally want to invest in others, and so I do things to make sure that they excel. At the last assignment, I made sure that everybody left with, a brand new award at MatchCom level. And I wrote a package for a new ribbon. And I was trying to learn basically what a deputy did as at the deputy chaplain level. And so he gave me actually responsibilities. I even got to do a review packet for the civilians. That was a lot of fun, right? So literally stuff that I would never touch again as a regular field chaplain. People is my job, not the paperwork, right? And so that's more what this year is for me. I really want to invest in all the True North, well, actually, all the CGOs and the Chaplain Corps on base. So my hope is to, one, bring us all together for a dinner here soon. So I'm thinking about, next month. I need to make reservations. And because there's a lot of people that we don't know their spouses. The awesomeness about being in the chapel is normally you know each other's spouses, you got their numbers for emergencies, etc. But I've never met a lot of my coworkers' spouses because I work with their husbands, and they're in yes, and then and what's it called? And they're in different groups, etc., etc. And so the coming together is my investment this year. Nice. The other thing is giving them an opportunity for a murder board amongst ourselves. One day we'll be able to compete against each other. And so I definitely want to have the opportunity for us to just grow. Since narrative is brand new, let's do this together. Let's have a conversation. Let's say why this sentence could be better. Because it's a sentence now. Yeah. Elaborate more, give more detail, take this detail out. It's not as important. Like, I would love to chat it up and so just let's grow together.
Yeah, I think that's the only way to learn too. I know in the beginning, my first 5 years or whatever it was, you were either firing off these packages or having your supervisor, and then you hear nothing and you're like, I think I write okay. And then you realize you don't really write that great, but no one ever told you. So that murder board aspect, when you have, 3 or more people in the room, like that doesn't sound the way you think it does. So bouncing ideas off each other is definitely a great idea. So that's great that you're transitioning to this 3rd year and got some goals, get some stuff knocked out. Back to your career field. In your opinion, what's the most important personality trait someone would need to be a successful chaplain?
I'm going to go with, I kept saying, what's the opposite of selfishness? Oh, it's selflessness. Oh, okay. I think that being military, they teach us how to compete against one another, right? It's a competition. The catch is that in the, of course, Chaplain Corps, our biggest rank is CGO. And so competing is naturally in the brain because it's just innate. My thought is definitely that we need a level of selflessness, a moment of it's not about me, right? Because it's about the people we serve. And I love that they're our bread and butter. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the airmen, big A, right? Mm-hmm. And so my thought is definitely let competition stay where it is in just that realm. But the selflessness portion is important for the everyday. Yeah, I'm not writing a package every day, but I'm serving people every day.
Yeah, I think having people at the center, you can have different left and rights or different priorities or whatnot. But if you keep people at the center, you can't really go wrong unless you're putting some people over other people. That might be a whole nother thing. But people in general, I think, got to be at the center.
Yeah.
That's a good one. What is one piece of advice you'd give someone starting out in your specific career?
Oh, I like this one. It reminds me of, I do MRT, RTA training for our FTACers, and I just trained on bring your strengths. So the day before we were talking about value-based goals. And so learning what your values are so you can set your goals around that, right? If my goal is, my value is my family. So I do nothing in my plans, literally in my goals, that's contrary to that value. And so that's what I bring to the table with them. But I let them know that same value is inside your strengths, right? And so what you value, your core values is inside of who you are. And I always invite brand new chaplains to bring you to the table, bring your strengths, because the mission it needs it.
Yeah, I think that's super important. It's funny. I just had my midterm feedback with Colonel McFarland, and I was kind of chuckling, and it's always kind of funny to me. So I took the ASVAB, and I got 80s and 90s in most categories, and I happened to get a 63 in admin, and I am now medical admin, and I am now the front office. Yeah. And so it's just kind of funny because it's like I'm not supposed to be good at reviewing documents all day, but I realize I have to play to my strengths. So I said, play to my strengths, almost exactly like you said. And so I go down the hall and I talk to people and I get out of my desk and out of my chair and go and see things. And by the relationships, I have people help me. And so even though the admin skills might not be perfect, I have, coworkers that help me and I know what they're good at. So I give Jen a lot of things to review and you make it work. But I think that's like often overlooked. Like, it's like, what's your weakness? We say that, but like, how do you make your strength work for you? Because that's just as good. So like, don't have perfect admin, but I'm going to make it work based on those relationships.
Yeah.
So we're going to focus back and finish this episode talking about mental health. One of the main purposes of this podcast is to integrate mental health into more conversations. We're going to clear the stigma out and not being able to talk about it. So even though this particular episode's on, an AFSC, mental health has got to be more normal and more common to talk about. So next question is, did you have conversations about mental health growing up?
We didn't actually, which is,
We didn't either.
oh yeah, you were adolescent, right? You were a child, stay in a child's place, and then you were a teenager, and then you were going crazy. Clinical pastoral education teaches you speak in I's, not the we's. I was a hormonal adolescent.
It was your fault.
Yeah, it was all me. But I didn't understand what was going on, right? I didn't understand that what I was feeling, the confusion, the ups and downs. I couldn't use the word depressed because that was not
Illness.
to be used. Yeah, that was definitely not to be brought into my mom's house. Because why would you be depressed?
You have a great
I don't
life.
provide. Yeah, I don't provide enough for you, and so I immediately had to snap out of that. So we didn't talk about mental health. That came along, I think, in undergrad. Even then, I really did enter a depression, and just the craziness of entering adulthood, right? Because it was the leftovers of what was going on emotionally from high school, and then bringing it into college.
And you're supposed to be an expert so fast, right? Like,
Yeah, when you turn 20, of course.
You're an expert.
Yeah,
You're an
I'm no
adult.
longer a teenager. I'm a grown up. But yeah, and so I went through that. I took psychology like everybody else. And then I took Christian ethics. And that one started opening my eyes to the different ways people think. And then I had friends who were taking sociology. And so that started making me think even more outside the box, because I was like, man, maybe I should take sociology. Maybe I'm in the wrong place. It wasn't until I met Chaplain, oh my goodness, I think he was a major at that time. Chaplain Major Gun at that time. He was a recruiter, and I think he was a recruiter literally until I came in. So I met him in 2002 after 9/11 hit, and we finally saw a recruiter come to our school. And he started telling me about all the amazing things that a chaplain does, and downrange what it looks like, and how he was literally helping people get through their days. And I was like, oh my gosh, I want to help people get through their days.
Yeah, what an impact.
What does that do? And he was talking about mental health and their spiritual health, and how all of their health, spiritual, mental, physical, right? Social, all play a role. And I was like, I want that. Sign me up. Yeah. And so, yeah.
So that
ever
rolls
since.
right into the next one. Maybe that touches on it, but why is mental health important to you?
Yes, the whole person. So my undergrad was at Oral Roberts University, and they specialized in the whole person. Lots of people immediately ask you, if you went to Oral Roberts, you want to be a pastor. Well, just so happened I didn't. That's kind of where I landed. But no, I don't want to be a pastor. So I like when they ask my medical friends that. Yeah, ask them. Because it was about the whole person. They had medical, they had legal, they had governmental. Like, they just were really trying to pour into the next generation. And it makes sense today more than it did then. But that's what I want for our military airmen, to pour into their whole self and remind them that not just one aspect of them is important. Your physical, yeah, I want you to pass your PT test. I also want you to be able to go home and talk to your spouse like they're a human being. I want you to be able to have a real relationship with your kids and not be a vegetable because you can't mentally get from that TDY, that deployment that you just got off of. Like, I pray that I'm such an impactful and caring leader that's what I bring to the fight.
Yeah, it's so interesting to me, like going back to talking about the mental versus physical. Like, if you ask somebody, hey, I'd like to run faster, they'd probably go and print you off an 8-page thing on, these intervals you could do and whatnot. But if you're like, I'd like to be able to talk to my spouse better, it's, gets awkward and it gets weird. I don't like, why is that? That's like a weird thing. You know, people get all ripped and, you know, at the gym, but if you want to better your mental health, it's taboo. We're getting better, but still a ways off. So what are some of the habits that you have that you kind of do reoccurring to make sure you're staying on track for your mental health?
So I like to do self-care. As the chaplain of the med group, I've discovered that I am the caregiver of caregivers. And you know how hard it is to take care of caregivers? Do you know why it's hard to take care of caregivers?
Ask a nurse. Where's Colonel Jones?
They don't take care of themselves. I love that I got to talk to the Surgeon General the other day and make that joke to him, and he fell out laughing. Like, getting my docs out the office, impossible. My nurses or nurse practitioners, impossible, because they have so much charting to do. My technicians are trying to support their docs and nurses, etc. Those at the front desk, you know, they're apprehensive to leave, but dying to do so. Logistics, systems, you name it. Everybody is busy trying to take care of the next person, right? Take care of the team, take care of the mission, take care of the patient. And in the midst of that, they are suffering. And so I continued to talk about how they needed to take care of themselves. And then I started suffering and I didn't realize I wasn't taking my own advice. Because I'm really good at that.
Yeah, that's good. I remember Colonel Marshall had a couple of his commanders call where he told a story of, you know, if you were driving by somebody on the side of the road and with a flat tire, would you help them? And we're like, oh, yeah, of course. He'd stop and help them. We're A-type. We like to fix things. And so we're going to help them. But then he's like, if you're on the side of the road and then someone says you need help, what do you say?
No, I'm good.
No, I got it. It's like, that's weird. You flip that instantly, and all of a sudden, so he was like, please take the help, which is kind of difficult. So I've been in 3 groups. I've been mission support group, ops group, and now med group, and definitely believe that and can see that where everybody likes to help people.
Yes.
I mean, maybe not maybe it's 90 or 95%, but the wanting to take care of people is so ingrained in the nurses, and then even, you know, logisticians and other people, they're in there and have that mindset of helping others. So that's definitely good. It's one good, I think, to identify. So make sure you're identifying when you do need help. Accepting it is probably, you know, the more difficult thing. But that next part of that is probably setting up reoccurring or something where the massage is set, the salon is scheduled, or maybe something like that. Because life is crazy and it moves fast. So I think we probably need to put stuff on the books, or luckily my wife just forces me, so that's great. Thank you. But that's good stuff. Last question we got here is, what is the biggest challenge you overcome in your mental health?
I think my last assignment was was a tough one. And so I think it was progressive, right? I just finished teaching on burnout. And so it went from stress, consistent stress, chronic stress, into burnout. But burnout is such a easy one to lean right into depression and anxiety, right? Because now you're constantly anticipating that bad day that you already lived. And so now you're expecting to relive it again and again and again. And I literally did that. I literally lived the bad day over and over and over again. And it just got worse with COVID. So then I moved to that assignment with a 3-month-old. And when we were PCSing, we had a 3-year-old. Oh. And when I was packing his stuff, I got overwhelmed and so sad because I felt like I missed 3 years of his life. I became super inward. I turned only to me and TV. I didn't want to leave the house. I isolated, and it just was not a great situation. My husband got back in the cars, and so I didn't get the awesome opportunity to join him, which is what I always said I would do. And so that was really sad for me, sad to me. But I absolutely now work against that challenge, to identify, name it quickly so I can fix it.
Yeah, I just saw something recently that I thought was really interesting because I do it a lot. I reflect back and think of, what I should have said and how I should have said it or how some situation went.
Oh, absolutely.
And so it made me think of it because you mentioned the anxiety and living through it. So I guess they studied the brain, we're looking at it, and the things that are released and the things that flash on the brain map when they're studying for a situation you're thinking about is the exact same as if you're actually living it.
Yes.
So if you have anxiety about something that will happen, it's the same as if you lived it. That just blew my mind. So you don't even have to be in the argument. You can anticipate the argument, and the same things are released and going on as if you were in front of the boss arguing or whatever the particular situation is. So obviously easier said than done, but got to try to shut those down, decompress, put it in a mental box, tie it with a bow, and try to get rid of it because it's the same. So we think, oh, well, it's not really happened. I'm just thinking about it. But according to that study done by very smart people, it's the exact same thing. So that's really crazy.
Yeah. What's interesting is that some genius told me that we should have like mindful moments in our conference room. And it was echoed in our burnout. Yeah. So I was like, oh, this person must be a genius.
Stopping and reflecting is always good. So we're at the end. Want to give you a chance for last words of wisdom. What are your closing thoughts?
Oh, that's good. So my closing thoughts are not all chaplains are bad. Just meet another one. If all of them are like that bad one, then you're at the wrong base. But my hope is and prayer is that it's got to be the self-care. Like I said, I take care of caregivers all day, every day. And even if they're in support, they're still caring, right? And so my hope and prayer is that everyone learns how to stop and breathe, meditate, get an app that backs you up, right? Or learn actual techniques that can get you past the brink of failure. Learning to reframe my story from my last assignment is actually what's stopping me from having all sorts of terrible words about it, right? And now my thoughts have even changed about it because I had to reframe my narrative. And so that's my hope and prayer, that people learn new techniques to get them through to the next day.
That's good stuff. I've heard from Simon Sinek. He's mentioned it a couple different times, but it was interesting. He went and asked questions to people that were at the Olympics. He said, "How are you feeling?" And they said, "I'm excited." And then he was asking other people that were giving presentations or whatever it was, and they said, "I'm nervous." And he's like, different emotion, but it was interesting because he stopped and thought about what the output to your body is. He's like, oh, they both had sweaty palms. Their heart rate increased a little bit. They were both a little, ready for the next action. So the outcome in your body is exactly the same. How you frame it is different. Yeah. So the Olympics, they'd worked their whole lives to prove themselves that day. So they're like, I'm excited. This is going to be the best day ever because I've worked my whole life. I'm going to crush this. And the other one was, public speaking or presentation or something. Everyone hates public speaking. And so they're nervous. But all they have to do is reframe. I'm excited. I'm going to get after this. I'm going to crush it. Yeah. And so reframing is definitely important.
Yes.
Because the outcome's still going to be the sweaty palms and whatever, but it's how you look at it. So that's good stuff. Well, thank you for listening to AFFC's 1 through 9. Remember, exploring different career fields is an important step in finding the right path for you. Please join us next episode as we continue to explore different career fields and the opportunities they offer. If you have any questions or want to share your own career story, please let me know. And always, I'm super glad we got to talk a little bit about mental health today. They will be ingrained and intertwined into all of these stories as we continue to bust the stigma. And we will see you next time. I love you all, and take care of one another.